Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Philly Sports Pulse. I am your host, Jesse Cherone, alongside my guy, Adam Ben. This is the inaugural episode of Philly Sports Pulse, where we are bringing you the best insight, analysis, and news straight to the heart of the city of Philadelphia. Adam, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, Jesse. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and excited to get this thing rolling. Gotta have a lot of love for the city of brotherly love to be here on this channel, and I know you got a lot of that. So excited to be here.
Absolutely. Um, and I mean, let's just get right into this thing. Because we've got a lot to go over tonight. Firstly, you've got to go start with the birds, man. Sweet. So, give me your quick thoughts on how you think we're gonna do against the foes from Texas.
Yeah, it's a really interesting matchup, Jesse, and one that I think looks a lot different than what we saw week one potentially. These are two teams that have kind of went in directions similar to what we expected, but maybe in different forms, right? The Eagles' offense has had its ups and downs to much public concern over the last couple of weeks, and they go out and they face a Dallas defense which has retooled over the last couple of weeks. They go in, they add Quinnen Williams, who had that big game the other night. Granted, against a Raiders offensive line that has had its struggles this season, but he showed what he can bring as one of the premier pass rushers on the interior defensive line in this league. And then on the other side of the ball, this Dallas Cowboys running game has been fantastic. And as good as the Eagles defense has been over the last couple of weeks, that is potentially their weakness, is the ability to stop the outside run. It's something we've seen teams be able to attack them on, especially early in the season. You think back to maybe that Tampa Bay game or that Los Angeles Rams game. So I'm excited to see how these two teams match up. And yeah, I think we have a lot to talk about and a lot to dive into when it comes to these two football teams.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I will say, my God, with that new and improved front that the Eagles have with Jalen Phillips and the uh, uh, certified hater um, that I hate to name Dalt. I hate to drop in here Dalt, but my God, um, he is not exactly a fan of uh not, oh my God, it's not it's not Jordan Phillips. I'll grab your name
Jalen
when
Carter,
I get you Jay not yeah
Jordan Davis.
Jordan Davis. There you go. Yes, for some reason he wanted Jordan Davis traded uh, before the season started. I see. Yes, you're still a fan of him. But yeah, at some point, Don, if you want to come on and explain yourself here, I don't exactly understand that, but when he was fatty, all right, cool. Yeah. Uh, I think Jordan Davis this year, he's certainly. I mean, let me put it this way: he's much improved to start this year in comparison to others. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Davis has been incredible this year. You going into the season, and I'm not with Dalton wanting him traded. That's a guy who's on a 1 year contract. But I will say that that's a guy who definitely had some questions coming in. He was a guy who struggled, especially as a pass rusher due to his weight, struggled to play on the field, be on the field for 3 downs at a time. And I mean, I got to go to camp in August for my job, and going to camp immediately, you could see the buzz around that building for a guy who was in shape for the first time in his career, really. He was skinnier than ever before and as athletic as ever. And I think there's an argument to be made that he has been the best player on this Philadelphia Eagles defense at times throughout this season. The impact that he's made, both in the run game and in the pass game, has been incredible. And you add to that the fact that Jalen Carter over the past couple weeks has finally rounded into form. He is finally in shape after his struggles early this season, and it makes for one of the best interior defensive lines in football. And I think they're going to be a force against this Dallas Cowboys interior offensive line. Now, I will add that Dallas Cowboys interior offensive line has been a lot better over the past couple of weeks than they were earlier this year, like I mentioned when we faced them earlier this season. Tyler Smith and Tyler Booker have been really stellar offensive guards for this team this season. They have had the ability with Javonte Williams to get the ball rushing inside. So I do think it's going to be an interesting matchup to watch on Sunday. And I mean, we're going to find out a lot about both sides of the football.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think that the corner turned, especially when Davis had that blocked field goal at the end of that Rams game a couple weeks ago. I mean, seriously, a guy that big should not be able to run that fast to the other side of the end zone. Like, there's no way. But yeah, it's really impressive for him. Now let's shift to the offensive side of the field here for the Birds. Uh, Obviously, they have not looked good the last two games against Detroit and the Packers. Um, but AJ Brown did uh, talk to Jeffrey Lurie a week or two ago, saying that he will quit the social media stuff. Um, do you think at some point it's inevitable that he steps up to the AJ Brown that we know and love? Because let's be honest, when he's up there, when he's getting going, he's one of the top five, top three wide receivers in the league.
Yeah, Jesse, I think it's a question I've gotten a lot this week, and a question I think we've all gotten a lot over the past couple of weeks. It's, how do you get AJ Brown involved? Why is AJ Brown not the same? And I think there's a lot of factors built into it, but the main thing that I continue to point to is the lack of, really great route progressions within this Eagles offense installed by Kevin Patullo. I saw a great statistic that I just pulled up. It was from Denise Selman. Shout out Denise this week, and the amount of hitch routes that are within this Eagles offense that really prevent their playmakers to be able to, take the ball and generate yards after catch. I think it's a serious hindrance to their ability to create explosive plays as an offense. You look at the rest of the league, they're running around, on average, like a 15% rate where they're running hitch routes. The Eagles are up at 25%. That is a pretty insane number for a pretty simple route. And so, these hitch routes, this is, stopping in that middle of the field, and you're allowing that corner to kind of come to you, and you're not creating separation for these receivers to get into space. And that's something that is essential to AJ Brown, is his ability to get into space, use his physicality against these smaller defenders, and generate. And so I think, I look for them to try to get him involved in more ways than just that route tree. And I look for the same from Devontae Smith as well. I think Devontae is a little more able to handle different kinds of route trees because he's a more elite catcher of the football in general, and less reliant on his physical talents. But I think both of these guys need to be more a part of this offense than they have been so far this season in order for them to be successful. And that comes, in my eyes, firstly down to Patullo. And we can talk about the quarterback a little bit later.
Oh boy, yeah. You know what? Let's talk about the quarterback now because
Oh,
I'll start off. Um, I'll start off by saying I was on another podcast this week, part of the 302 Birds podcast network, Under the Wing. Shout out Joey Havens and Mooner. Um, but they asked me, I was a guest, and they asked me who your mid-season MVP was. And at that point in time, I said Jalen Hurts. Now, I, I think at this point, this is probably going to get me flamed. I know it will. He, to me, he's had some costly mistakes. I'll put it this way: costly mistakes that have not made him, in my eyes, the MVP anymore. Now, still, he's still top 10, top 5 at the very, top, it's more, yeah, more top 5, if we're being completely honest. But you can't tell me that he hasn't had certain throws in certain situations that have really costed the Birds.
Yeah, absolutely, Jesse. I mean, I'm sitting here in my Love Hurts hoodie tonight. I'm, a full supporter of what Jalen Hurts has done for this organization, for this franchise. But I think in order to really dive into Jalen Hurts' legacy as a player and who he has been for this organization, you have to also acknowledge his flaws. And Jalen Hurts' biggest flaw has been his lack of desire to take risks and his inability to be efficient throwing over the middle of the field, and therefore the Eagles' schematic approach to offense, which is generally trying to work within the hashes and not over the middle of the field. So I think given that provides a serious limitation to what this team can do as an offense and provides a serious limitation to a guy like A.J. Brown or a guy like Devontae Smith, which these are guys that could be running Puka Nakua route trees or Jamar Chase route trees and catching balls in the middle of traffic with, a guy like Matthew Stafford or Joe Burrow. And they are not able to do so because of the limits within this offense. Now, I think some of that also comes down to Nick Sirianni. Some of that comes down to his philosophy as an offense. You look back to their days in Indianapolis, they were running similar stuff. But, I mean, I think the quarterback definitely places a bit of a ceiling on what this offense can be at times. And we've seen them break free of it in games like the Super Bowl, games like the NFC Championship game, because of their ability to run the football. And at the moment, because of the woes of this offensive line, they're not able to do that. A lot more weight is placed on the quarterback, and with that, that's not something that he's handled well. So I think on one hand, I look for them to have more success in all facets of the game, whether that's, the struggles on the offensive line being improved, whether that's Patullo, as we mentioned, but you have to place a lot of blame on the quarterback, who not only limits the offense, but was missing throws the other night as well. You can acknowledge the wind all you want, but those deep balls to AJ, that one in the first quarter that everybody's pulling the clips out of. You have, the one to Jahan Dotson where he misses him over the middle of the field. I mean, you could probably find 4 or 5 from the other night that are just flat out misses on a night where they really needed them to pull away in that game. So I think, we're not talking about a hot seat for the reigning Super Bowl MVP, but it certainly has not been all pretty so far. And I will add the MVP is Matthew Stafford, Jesse Cherone. You got to put some respect on
Matthew Stafford. What?
Yep.
Oh no. Oh, not Sam Darnold, huh?
Nah, not after last week. Not after last week. That was a rough week. Rough
Mm.
week for Sam Darnold. Rough week for the Sam Darnold fan club, which I am an avid member of.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna be honest. I am I am very surprised that he is having the year that he is, especially after his just tenure, Mr. Seeing Ghosts. But
No.
uh, I mean, listen, he's under the scheme that they've had in Seattle. They've been balling out, but yeah, after this week, I don't know. I really thought, I don't want to look too far ahead, but like I really thought that it was destiny for the Eagles in Seattle to be in a divisional game, but I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking Seattle, I think that's still a team that, you know, Darnold turns the ball over 4 times in that game, right? And 2 of them are, pretty wacky picks that just sail on him. That really puts them in a deficit in that game. And they're still a score away from beating what is widely regarded as the best team in football. If they're able to lessen the turnover battle just a little bit with how their defense played in that game, I mean, they really challenged the Rams in a way that no team has. Sorry, Philadelphia Eagles. Their ability to really control Nakua and Adams and that passing game through how great their rush was throughout the entirety of that game, I thought was great. They have the Leonard Williams resurgence has been incredible on the defensive side of the football. And then, on offense, if they ever figure out how to run the ball, they are going to be unstoppable because Jackson Smith and Jigba is probably the offensive player of the year and has done it all for them.
Now,
So
this is a correct take. This is a
exactly.
very correct take. Yeah,
Exactly. So I
yeah.
think I think they're a worthy challenger, and I think they match up well in certain ways against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I do think the pressure that newly built Eagles defensive line would be able to put on Darnold would be a serious challenge for him, and I think coming into Philadelphia is a challenge for anyone. And so, if the
Mhm.
Eagles are able to lock up the 1 seed, that would be crucial. But I'm still scared of that Seattle Seahawks team, man. I think they're still right in this.
Listen, I mean, you saw it in the 2019 or 2020 playoffs. They came into here. Now, listen, they were facing off against Carson Wentz. So big difference between Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. I mean, my God, Carson Wentz basically won us that game against Minneapolis a couple weeks ago. But still, um, that defense was just ridiculous. Not Legion of Boom ridiculous, I feel like, but they came into Philly and just also the Eagles were also dealing with a barrage of injuries, so there's that. But listen, on the offensive side of the ball, they're also dealing with injuries. Before we get into last week, just give me your assessment of the offensive line because while Saquon, to me at least, while Saquon Barkley has not had the year that I think a lot of us expected, I think on top of Kevin Cole being a complete idiot, um, I think you gotta blame a little bit on the health of the Eagles' offensive line.
Yeah, I think absolutely, Jesse. Cam Jurgens exits that game with a concussion. Lane Johnson exits that game with this Frank injury. And if you know anything about football, you know that Lane Johnson is the best player on the Philadelphia Eagles. He is the most crucial cog to how this engine runs. He is probably the best right tackle in the National Football League, and so missing him for any period of time, even if it's just the 4 to 6 weeks that it's expected to be, is going to be horrible. Um, I think this Eagles offense has done a better job at running the football because they've diversified their run scheme a little bit over the past couple weeks. They have forced Jalen Hurts, who does not like going under center, to go under center a little more than he has in the past. They've utilized play action a little more than they have in the past. And that has opened things up a little bit more alongside this offensive line getting healthy. They've been a little more effective as a rushing team over the past couple weeks. With Johnson out, I expect that to continue, and I expect them to look for, try to find holes on the interior with Saquon Barkley. But teams are going to continue to stack the box, and the challenge that running from under center represents is that you don't quite have the threat of Jalen Hurts running the football as well. And that was something that they were pointing out on the broadcast for about all of Sunday night was that you weren't really seeing Jalen Hurts' rushing ability a lot throughout that football game. And that's something that can really open up the offense as well. So I think if you're Kevin Patullo, you have to kind of find a balance of both in order to make this run game more effective. But with the loss of Johnson, with the potential loss of Jurgens going into this week, I'm kind of expecting something similar, even against what I would qualify as a lesser rushing defense in the Dallas Cowboys. But I don't necessarily think we can count them out given what they did. It was just one game on Monday Night Football. That was quite the performance against Ashton Genty and that Raiders offense. And they there's potential there. So
Yeah. Before we move on and recap last week, just wanted to run through a final score prediction. What do you got? Give me Give me what you got for next week.
Yeah. I will say 24-17 Eagles. I'll say that. Yeah.
24-17.
I
And
think they win by a score, but I think it's closer than it appears.
yeah. And Roman it makes a great point also here in the comments. It's not easy sweeping a team, specifically a division rival, specifically at home. Uh, stay humble. Oh boy, do we have a Cowboys fan in our chat? Don't AJ, the boys, you know what to do. Um, but yeah, okay. So we got some Cowboys fans in here. Great, cool. Okay, cool. I got 22-17 Eagles,
Yeah,
and I
I like it. Low
really think.
scoring.
Yeah, I've not been impressed with this Eagles offense, but I do have two bold takes. One, Devontae Smith, 2 touchdowns. When listen, in the wide receiver core, when you needed a guy that has stepped up, it has been him. He stepped up big time against the against Green Bay, let a couple weeks ago. And really, he was our entire offense. If I remember correctly, my God, he just mossed their secondary. Now, their secondary isn't the greatest thing in the world, but listen, they also held the Eagles to what less than 20 points. So I think he's been your main force on offense. And no, I don't expect AJ to step up to normal AJ levels. I don't. I really don't. I'm like, there's something going, and I think a lot of it has to do with the play calling. I think it's 3 or 2 birds, and I think Adam, would you agree? Are we in fire Petula territory?
I wouldn't go there yet. No. Um,
Okay,
yeah,
wait,
I think it needs more time than that. But
okay,
but yeah,
all right.
I certainly understand the concerns. Um, it's I think again with the injuries to the offensive line, with the play of the quarterback. And I mean, I haven't even said this yet, but go back and watch some of this on film. And I mean, some of these AJ Brown routes also come down to him as well. There's a lot of
Yeah,
giving up at the end of these route trees that
yes,
I'm not sure everyone would necessarily appreciate watching it back on film. So it's interesting to watch. That's for sure. I think there's if you ask any person in that organization, they'll very frankly tell you that there's a lot of blame to throw around. So even if Patulo is number one on, we'll say, the hit list. He's I would not count him as fireable yet.
yeah, no, I would agree. All right, so let's move back a little bit. Oh, to the Eagles versus the Lions. Nope, that's Sixers. Excuse me. There we go. Birds Lions. Another low scoring game, but one where we were talking about Jordan Davis. Um, he he really he really stepped up in this Eagles secondary. Eagles interior line rather really stepped up big time.
Yeah, absolutely, Jesse. I mean, both Davis and Carter, like we mentioned, were incredible in this game. This is a Lions interior offensive line that has really been kind of their weakness. They've been forced to play the rookie Tate Ratledge on one side. They have an undrafted free agent playing the other side, and it's been brutal for them at times in that area. So Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis went to work and took advantage. They were able to bat down a couple balls. They were able to get pressure on Jared Goff, and we all know what happens when you throw Jared Goff in cold weather outside. His completion percentage is 70% when he is inside in dome at home. It drops down to 59% when you throw him outdoors. So, especially, in the cold months. So, I mean, you know, take with that what you will, but that caused this Eagles defensive line to be able to create a little more pressure due to Goff's inability to really get rid of the football and the pressure that was in his face. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because you want to talk about a crowd that really wanted Jared Goff to be named midseason MVP. I'm not gonna lie. I saw a lot of that, and
Really?
to me, he's never been that that level. He's good. He's underrated, sure, but he's never to me that guy that you think of for MVP. He's just not.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been an argument in the past, for sure, especially, with the way at times I think his ability to get the football out quickly has elevated that offense. But I mean, when you look at the struggles of this Lions offense at times throughout this year, it's been down to Goff and the struggles of this interior offensive line and the greater pressure that it's placed on him. And there's a reason why, they fired their offensive coordinator, John Morton, within early in that season is because they weren't really maximizing their passing game in the way they were looking to. They hired Dan Campbell. I think Dan Campbell called a great game. I think it was just, the play of this Eagles interior and the struggles of that Lions interior. And that really showed. But I think you also have to give credit to guys like Jalen Phillips, guys like Jalen Hunt, especially Phillips. They moved him all across the defensive line. He played interior, exterior. They dropped him in coverage on a couple snaps, and he was all over the place on that defense. We loved Josh Sweat when he was here and what he brought to this defense. Jalen Phillips is Josh Sweat on steroids, guys. You are going to love what he brings to the field when he is healthy. He is just a freak athlete who can play anywhere and is as explosive off of the line of scrimmage as anybody. He is going to be really fun for the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, this is an interesting tidbit because um, we've seen a little bit more of this guy the last two games. Running back Tank Bigsby against the Lions, 4 for 34, about 8.5 yards a carry.
Yeah.
Um, like I'm seriously considering if I am Kevin Stula. Now, listen, I don't AP and Nick Sirianni are listening to us, but maybe they should. We clearly know what we're talking about here. I really think that Tom Bixby should maybe be getting some more carries. He's nice.
Yeah, I don't know, Jesse. I think a lot of the Tank Bigsby touches that have gotten him into space are mostly based on kind of, different game script than what the defense is expecting, right? You have Tank Bigsby come in on third down. You're expecting him to come down as that third down back. You're expecting a passing game script, maybe it's third and long. That's generally when he's coming in. And he comes in, he runs the football and, is able to get a couple yards over expected. Because they're not necessarily stacking the box like they would if a number 26 is in the game. So I think, a large part of it is just due to him not being Saquon Barkley and not presenting the same threat as Saquon Barkley, and how defenses are reacting in general in relation to that. So I'm pro Tank Bigsby getting carries simply because the load that was being placed on Saquon was unbearable for really any running back across the league. But I think he's getting his proper share at the moment for what it's worth.
Another thing that I noticed in this game, the Lions were able to stop push a couple of times. Now, I think everybody um, at the start of this season really thought that the tush push was going to be this unstoppable thing, as it has been the last year or two. But there have been more and more times this season that, for one reason or the other, there have been teams that have been able to stop the tush push. Jordan Mailata. I remember they were one drive they were getting close to tush push territory. If I remember correctly, and he had a penalty on him, which that's another thing. He's up to, I think, 6 or 7 penalties on the year, and his career high is like 9. So you think the troubles with the tush push have been mainly on the offensive line? What do you think is the deal with that? How do you fix it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm less worried about the tush push. I think the big thing with the tush push right now is the ability to officiate it. and it's kind of been the running discourse across the entirety of the NFL this season. We're seeing a lot more false starts with the tush push, teams trying to catch other teams off guard during the tush push to running up early. You saw a couple even Eagles false starts during that game on the tush push. But as a play, I mean, it's as effective as it gets. The two situations where they aren't able to convert, I think one of them that you're referring to happens in the third quarter, and they're facing more of a 4th and 2 than the 4th and 1, and it's a 1-yard play. Like, this is the kind of thing that happens. Sometimes, when you're facing a long 4th and 2 like that, you're not going to be able to get it as easily as you would with maybe a simple 4th and 1. So, it's not something I'm worried about. There's still nobody running it as effectively as the Eagles are, and I expect them to continue to run it until the NFL stops them, which I believe will be this offseason, sadly.
You think that the touch push will be banned?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the league is seemingly sick of it. I think the officials are sick of officiating it. And I think the Eagles will be just as effective on 4th down without it, because at the end of the day, when this offensive line is healthy, they are one of the 5 best in football, and that is for sure.
I mean, listen, I don't know how we haven't been running it more, but earlier in the year, they instead of a touch push, they did a couple of little shovel passes to Dallas
Mm-hmm.
Goddard. Like that
Yeah.
was that was sexy.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
don't know, I don't know why we're not doing that more. To be
Yeah.
completely honest with you,
Yeah. And
so maybe try more of that.
Yeah, and that's a play that's been effective across the entirety of the NFL. Well, Steelers are doing that a lot. They have Darnell Washington, who's this 6'8" monster of a man who runs through the line of scrimmage on similar plays like that. The Seahawks have AJ Barner. I think the Bengals are running some of that with Noah Fant. Like these are trends that go across the entirety of the NFL, and there's still pushing involved in that. So of course, that's likely a play that would be gotten rid of too. But it's just so hard to officiate if you're one of these guys. A team running to the line of scrimmage and getting in a massive scuffle that you can't even see under the football, and trying to delineate who gets the first down and who doesn't. Like, it's an absolute nightmare. And so I think, given that, it's likely that the league tries to get rid of it. But it's not something I'm in support of, and it's not something that I think is going to make much of a difference for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on. And honestly, I was um considering I was thinking about going with Phillies, talking Phillies first, because free agency is definitely upon it's upon us and it's here. I need Dombrowski to make a move anytime, very 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 quickly. But there's a big time game coming up, Sixers Bucks, and Adam, let me throw it to you real fast. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what has been your thoughts on the Sixers this season? That loss against Toronto was tough, but
Yeah.
overall, what are your thoughts on the Sixers this season? Have you liked them?
Yeah, this is a fun 76ers team. This is a lot I don't want to say better than I expected, but a lot more interesting and more fun than I expected. I did not expect VJ Edgecombe to be this developed as early in his career as he has been on both ends of the floor. Got the chance to go watch him at Summer League, and he played fine. He was a inconsistent 3-point shooter and in college, and still learning how to use his physicality on defense, but he's really shown to be a strong offensive player so far in his career. He's making some of the right plays on defense, and I think he's going to continue to develop. And I've really been impressed with, at times, his big man rotation as well. I think Andre Drummond and Adam Bona have played really well for them at times, and of course Tyrese Maxey has, in a year, I think it's 6 now, taken an even bigger step up, and that's something you're going to look to continue for him. So I think they're a really fun basketball team. I think my biggest fear still is how much they rely on Tyrese Maxey. They have become, especially in the past couple of weeks, and you saw this last night against Toronto, a very isolation-based offense, and that is not something that's good for Tyrese Maxey or really anyone involved. And they also don't really have a legitimate, I would say, point guard type. I think Tyrese Maxey can be that at times, but he's not the best distributor. He's more effective when he's able to work off the ball, both as a catch and shoot guy and as a driver alongside Joel Embiid. So, I mean, I think the lack of having one on the roster, especially in those bench minutes, has led to either Edgecombe or Jared McCain having to take on those duties, and neither has been particularly effective as distributors in those. Their offense becomes kind of stagnant without Maxey on the floor because of that, and it becomes kind of stagnant in crunch time as well because teams are just throwing traps on traps on traps at Maxey, and that's something I think you can expect to see tonight as well with the Milwaukee Bucks team that does have a really solid defensive rotation of guards. They have a guy in Ryan Rollins who's been a real breakout candidate. He's my probably second place pick for most improved player so far earlier in the season. He's going to be a real challenge for Maxey. So I think this should be an interesting matchup because of that. But I mean, coming off a back-to-back against a weakened Bucks team, I think it's fair for both sides, and it should be real interesting.
Mhm. Now, you mentioned the point guard position, and I'm wondering where you factor Paul George into all of this.
Yeah.
Um, I consider him more podcast T rather than uh perfect player these days. I really am of the believer that he left LA and just said, "I'm gonna get my bag, man." Um, and he's kind of been meh ever since. But I'm wondering where you kind of factor him into all of this.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jesse. I think where I factor Paul George in is where I factored in Kelly Oubre before. And I think that's a big loss for the 76ers team that he's going to be out for a couple weeks. That's been kind of been underrated. Oubre was much improved on the defensive end, especially on the perimeter over the past couple years. He gave them a flexibility as a three-point shooter from the wing. And for Paul George, I look for him less to be a point guard, but more to fit that role because if we remember, Paul George was an all defensive team guy earlier in his career. Now, he's not up to that same speed physically and certainly not up to game speed yet. So I don't think we can make that the expectation. But I mean, you look at how much the Sixers defense has struggled in transition. Simply having an athletic body on this basketball team is something that's going to be of great aid to them. So I expect George to fit well with this 76ers team in probably a lessened role on offense, but a much greater role on defense than was probably expected from him on the initial signing. And, you know, that's worth, much more than it was last year for what it's worth.
Yeah. And now another one of the injury burrows, Joel Embiid. I think to me, this year is you're in a lot better of a situation, right? You don't really have to rely on him as much, uh, dropping 40 to 50 point games every day. Now the back to back situation and him being out, you know, pretty much every other game, that still hurts me internally, especially when you have guys like Dembona who to me hasn't been that impressive. Yes, he's really good with dunking, but otherwise, I hate the name drop here again, but he sort of reminds me of Ben Simmons. He does. He can't hit the three.
Yeah, I mean, I have been pro Joel Embiid in the past, and I think I view myself as pro Joel Embiid now, and I think that comes down to what this offense has looked like without Joel Embiid on the floor over the past couple weeks. And what Joel Embiid gives you is a pick and roll partner for Tyrese Maxey. He gives you, the threats at least of, some kind of paint offense or some kind of penetration, which at the moment, this offense doesn't really have. And Embiid, even at his worst, is still a really quality three-level scorer. Now, defensively, his abilities, as a rim protector have regressed significantly. I would say he is nowhere near the same presence he was on that end a couple years ago. But what he can give you on offense, I think he's still absolutely worth being on the court for as long as he physically can be there. And I think how Nick Nurse has played him in that position has been, a bit of a struggle, and that's kind of led him to struggle to find his rhythm. Yeah, I know you're referring to his, lesser 3-point percentage in comparison to the past. I think a large part of that has been his inability to really find a rhythm because he's playing like 5 spot minutes a night, every other night, in different places in different quarters, and he's kind of unable to really, find himself. But I think when he's off this restriction, when he's fully back to being, himself, I think it's going to be exciting to see what he can do, and I'm excited to see what this team looks like when he comes back from injury.
Yeah. You want to talk about another guy that's coming back from injury, and when he is on the floor, to me at least, my God, Jared McCain. You want to talk about that can hit a three, right? Like it's nobody's business. I love what he brings to the floor. But you've seen it with Embiid. When he's healthy, he's one of the best players in the league. But there are games where the injury bug has hurt him. And this first game back from Jared McCain, a little rough. But um, that being said, what do you expect from Jared McCain um, so as we progress this season?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the lack of that backup point guard, and that's not really what I want for Jared McCain, but because of the deficiencies of this roster, I think that's probably the envisioned role for Jared McCain. I think the expectation is going to be with that bench unit for him to be more of a, facilitator, similarly to how he had to be when Maxey was out, and to create for this offense as a whole. And I think that's a region that he really developed in over the course of the games that he did play last season, and think that he'll continue to grow in as he continues through his 76ers career. He's a great 3-level scorer, and he's still going to be able to get his buckets, but they need someone who can really bring some kind of rhythm to this offense, like we said, when Maxey's out. And, I think he is the solution to that.
Mhm. Now, um, as we look as we look forward eh, with the next couple of games this season, this year, we got the Bucks tonight, Heat, Magic, and then the absolutely garbage Brooklyn Nets. How do you listen? I I like my guys from New York. Um I you know what? Honestly, I sympathize with New York Giants fans too. They're docile. They're not gonna hurt anybody. Shout out JT Dwyer, a buddy of mine from Ursinus, fellow or not fellow Giants fan, but certified Giants fan. Um, like you know, so like I sympathize with. I don't think they're good, but I sympathize with New York fans. They're good. They're good. They're good people. But my God, every one of their teams, and I said this in another under the under the wing episode a couple weeks back. Those teams, every single one of them, are just straight up disappointments. You've got the Mets; they're gonna net. The Yankees lost in the playoffs to the Blue Jays. The Knicks, you never know what you're gonna get with the Knicks because I remember hearing from Mark Jackson on the pregame show that there was already some turmoil with the Knicks, and then you've got the Nets. They're just they don't have that it factor to me personally. So let let's let's stop talking about the Knicks for just a second and get into this upcoming schedule. That does include the Knicks. How do you see the next couple of games going for the 76ers?
Yeah, Jesse. I mean, it's similar to what they've faced over the past couple of weeks with a couple of Eastern Conference foes. But I think what I look for them is just to get a little more rest. This is a team that's already played 4 back-to-backs over the course of this season. That is one of the most over the course of the entire NBA. So I think in seeing this team a little more rested, you're probably going to get to see a little more Paul George, a little more Joel Embiid, a little more Jared McCain. And with that probably comes a little more success than we've seen in the past. If I'm being honest, I think tonight's going to be a difficult challenge. I think it's likely that they're going to be without McCain. I think he might have already been ruled out. I know they're going to be without Embiid and George. And so, facing this Bucks team shorthanded with, kind of the pressures that they can provide even without Giannis Antetokounmpo on offense, I think it's one that I look similarly to how I looked at that Detroit Pistons game last week, and I think one that could end similarly. But as they continue to get healthier, more rested, schedule gets a little easier, I think, things are going to look a little better, especially in an Eastern Conference that looks as weak right now as it does.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right. So our final little subject of the night. We're about 50 minutes in. We're uh almost done here. Then up next on Through Two Birds, it's the Sixers post game show with me, KJ, and Dennis. Nice little segment to that show later on the night after the game against the Bucks. But before we get into all that, let's talk with the Phils because this is a crucial off season for the Philadelphia Phillies. You have many free agents right now. That being Kyle Schwarber, Ranger Suarez, and I think most importantly, JT Realmuto. Honestly, it's close between him and Schwarber, but I really think that JT Realmuto should be a bigger priority for the Phillies than a lot of people, a lot of people are giving him credit for. I really am worried about the catching depth in free agency right now, and I'm a little bit worried about Rafael Marchand. Uh, In his limited role, he did look okay against the rest of the major leagues, but I'm not entirely sure that well, he is meant for the big moment. JT, a lot of people said that he would decline a major way um, this upcoming season, and honestly, he really didn't. JT, fun fact, through the playoffs, the Phillies are known for having a bad offense every time the playoffs do show up. But JT Realmuto is your Phillies hit leader in the playoffs. So I think it's honestly paramount that you lock him up to a 1 or 2 year deal personally. Um, and then wait for the market how that shapes out in 2027 or late after 2026 or 2027. That is, if we get a season in 2027 and beyond, because the and Players Association do not like each other at all, and we may be spiraling towards a lockout, which would absolutely suck. We saw that in the 93, 94, 95 season. And I wasn't alive, you weren't either, but I imagine it was not fun. We saw it during COVID. That was not fun. So I really think it's paramount for the Phillies to get a ring before baseball inevitably ends. So it starts with Jake. The JT needs to be consideration, but I think you have to in the same conversation talk about Kyle Schwarber. He is not your typical leadoff guy. He usually hits about 250, 260 or so. Um, but when most guys in the league hit 270, 280, 290 plus. But I think it's paramount that you get him signed. I'm really worried about him leaving to the Cincinnati Reds. They're one team that I look out for to give the Phillies some run for their money. Because I remember a few months ago, the Phillies played Cincinnati in Cincinnati. And for some reason, and I don't understand how this is not tampering, but the Phillies, uh, Kyle Schwarber, threw out the first pitch in one of their games to his dad. The Cincinnati Reds, they got that all sort of situated. I don't get that at all. I really feel like that's tampering. But Adam, how do you really see this off season going for the Phillies, and do you see them being in contention for a World Series in the years to come?
Yeah, Jesse, I think it's hard to tell this early. There's there's always that rumor mill coming out of the owners' meetings, right? Coming out of Vegas, and there's a lot of stuff flying around. I know there's a lot with the Phillies and their connection to Japan as of right now. There's a lot of talk about Murakami. There's been a lot of talk about what they're going to do from a pitching perspective. I know they're not looking to chase after Ranger Suarez, but do they look to unload Taiwan Walker? Can they unload Taiwan Walker? What does the future for Nick Castellanos look like? How easy is it going to be to move Nick Castellanos? Because we know he's not going to be a Philadelphia Philly next season. So a lot of questions that are kind of thrown up in the air. But I mean, I think you look overall at uh, this Philadelphia Phillies team, and I think it's hard not to look at them as a team that's going to regress going into next season, given the amount of talent that's kind of lying out there in free agency and the willingness and ability of this front office to really chase after that talent. But this is a team that we've said that about, I'd say, for just about 2 or 3 straight years, and they've managed to put something together, even if the actual product has not resulted in what we were looking for at the very end of the season. So I'm, I guess, I'll say hopelessly optimistic. I'll say that.
Let's stay optimistic. All right, cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Now let me go through as we approach about 55 minutes past the hour, um, or 55 minutes into this thing. Uh, but I feel obligated to give my pick. Um, my dream free agent signing, and that has to be actually not a free agent signing, but a trade. Um, and that being Byron Buxton of the Minnesota Twins. Right now, the reports are that he has um a no trade clause, but he's willing to move that to waive that if the Twins keep on tanking. And really, I have no reason to believe that they won't continue to tank. Um, Especially before teams like them can get away with being cheap, um, and just saving a couple of bucks. You saw them almost trade Joe Ryan. You saw them trade Duran to the Phillies. Um, you saw basically half of their major league roster gone uh, by the end of that trade deadline in July, August, September, whenever it was. Um, so I really think that Byron Buxton would be a perfect candidate in left field. Left field is where I would put him, and I would get rid of Brandon Marsh. Brandon Marsh to me, yes, he had a good regular season. He did. Um, but I think you really saw the player that he is when it came to the playoffs. Um, he like a lot of the Phillies offense. He did not show up, and he's been another guy that just to me isn't worth what we gave up. Logan O'Hoppe, he went to the Angels in that trade deadline. That dude is an absolute stud at the catching position. My God, if in an ideal world, um, I would love if Logan O'Hoppe could still be here, and then you let JT walk, and Logan step in, and step in for him. But alas, they made that trade from Brandon Marsh, and to me, like it's almost Garrett Stubbs esque. He's the vibes guy to me. And when you're trying to win a World Series, vibes aren't what get it done, it's result. And Brandon March this does not give you results.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. I understand. Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough because you he's he's a guy that um he's a dude that doesn't show up. I gotta plug in my headphones here real fast. But it's a lot of this lineup. Um, the Phillies, um, basically 1 through 4, the guys that you're paying $300 million, uh, or 300 million plus, that show up just really don't. Every time playoffs come around, and they've definitely has got to do some retooling. But at the same time, it's going to be really tough to get to chip off some of these deals. But a name that you mentioned, Nick Castellanos, um, he's I mean, my mother really likes him for reasons. Um, but he's a guy that again, uh, I think I could strike him out. To be completely honest with you, I think I could strike him out. And I'm a dude in a wheelchair that throws max 55 miles an hour. You know how? Uno, dos, trace, three sliders in the dirt, he's gone. I've never seen a guy that swings at more outside sliders in my entire life. Um, I I think he's a guy to me that needs a little bit of change of a scenery. I think some guys are built for um, for this city. Um, uh, you had a couple of Eagles players sign here and uh, retire in a week or two on the defensive side. To me, I maybe think that those guys aren't built for Phil, and maybe also there's a locker room issue. Um, not entirely sure what's going on there. But yeah, yeah, no, you're back. Um, yeah, I'm not sure how I pivoted to the Eagles, but um, I did. But I think the overarching point is that some people are built for the city and some aren't. And I think a major rehaul for this Phillies team is in order. In all honesty, I wish Howie Roseman was the general manager of the Phillies. I really do. That guy just knows how to play ball. Um, but uh, yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, so we're. I think that's all I had.
Yeah.
Um, anything? Any other final thoughts?
Nah, man. I'm excited for the Sixers. They're just booting up. I'm excited to see what you guys have to say later. And yeah, let's get one on the road for the first time in a while on a back to back.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you all for watching the inaugural episode of the Philly Sports Pulse, where we bring you the insight, news, and analysis straight to the heart of the city of Philadelphia. Thank you
Thank you.
also to 302 Birds, Dalton and KJ, for believing in me, believing in Adam, um, and allowing us to be a part of your platform and your network. Um, we're gonna do the best we will not we will not we will try our best not to disappoint. um we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna have intros, outros. We're gonna try and set up call lines, so for the folks at home can call in. We're gonna have some fun here on the Philly Sports Colts, man, and I'm excited to have you all for the ride. All right, that's going to wrap things up for the Philly Sports Pulse. Adam, thank you for doing this, my man. You are the
Thank
best.
you,
You know
sir.
that.
You're the
Love you,
best. Yes,
man.
sir. Yeah, love you too. It's awesome. All
And
right.
yeah, that's going to wrap things up. Have a good night, everybody. Go Burns. Go Sixers. Go Phils.